This is the honest truth. I felt the Spirit so strongly, and it said, this is a good man. So here's the deal. We get engaged. We end up getting married. And those first several months were so surreal. It would, I'd be watching the clock. It's ticking down to 5 o'clock. I know that within a half hour, he's going to be coming home, and that's my husband. I'm married. I'm married to this man. Yet I was not in love with him.
Hi, and welcome to And If Love Remains. I am your host, Mike Levitt, and we are continuing our series of love stories today with Mike and Kirsten Millsap. These are friends of mine. I'm excited to be here with them and talk about their story. This episode is brought to you by Music by Mike, Love by You, your source for custom songwriting. If you have an event, a wedding, or an anniversary coming up, or anything you'd like to celebrate with a custom song, Music by Mike, Love by You, catch it on Facebook. I'm excited to talk to Kirsten and Mike today about their love story. It's a fun story. And why don't we first, Kirsten, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit of background. Tell us where you're from. Just who are you? Give us the quick lowdown.
Okay. Well, my name is Kirsten Millsap, and I am a Utah girl, and I have been a singer and songwriter myself, so I'm into music. I was married once before for 4 years back in early 90s, and actually continued dating him for about a year, and then I met Mike, and he and I have been married for we're on our 25th year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you're Utah. Where in Utah did you grow up?
We grew up in the armpit of Vernal. Well, it's Vernal, Utah. So it is the armpit. But, I love it. I love it. And yes, Mike likes to make fun of my accent. We like to take 10 words and roll them into one. Right. Like if you say, I'm going to go to the store, you say, I'm going to go to the store. It's like one word. And wash my clothes. It's the ugliest thing. Yeah, it is the ugliest thing, but they are the best people.
And when you say arm, you weren't talking about the place Orem. You were talking about an armpit, right?
Armpit, yeah, not Orem, not Orempit.
Not arm.
Armpit. It's kind of up there in the corner, but it's dinosaur land.
Okay, right on. Yeah. Right on. Fantastic. And Mike, what about you? Give us a little background. Where are you from? Pre-Kirsten, we talk about
his life didn't begin until he met me. What are you talking about?
There's BK and AK. So we're talking about the BK portion of your life.
So BK, I consider myself from the Northwest. Oddly enough, I was born in Indiana, but only stayed there for about the first 6 months of my life. Then we went to Southern California for about the next 4. So in the San Diego area. And then moved up to Washington State. And those of us from Washington hate that we have to add the state to the end of that.
Yes.
But there's that evil place out east, so we have to put the state afterwards. So I grew up through middle school in Vancouver, Washington, and then moved out to the hills of Eastern Oregon through high school. So Baker City, Oregon.
Okay.
Is where I went through high school.
Now, where's that in comparison to Eastern Oregon? So that's like close to Idaho,
mm-hmm. Yeah, we're about 2.5 hours out of Boise.
Okay.
And about an hour and a half from the border.
Gotcha.
About an hour from the Snake River, which makes up most of the border between Oregon and Idaho. Okay. Yeah, so it kind of goes Pendleton, which most people know if you know the Oregon area. That's kind of the bigger city. LeGrand and then Baker City.
Right. There are places outside of Portland. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, there are.
Goodness, better places.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And he's a Gulf War veteran.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Air Force.
Spent 6 years in the Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah, had to get out of the small town. And so rather than struggle paying my way through college immediately, I decided to join the Air Force. So I joined up, went over to Guam, was my first base, Andersen Air Force Base in Guam,
Okay.
and spent a little under 3 years there. And then had my perfect duty station, which was oddly enough a place that Kirsten was at with her former husband as well. And that was in McCord Air Force Base in Washington, so
Okay.
outside Tacoma.
Yeah, he was an Air
That
Force
was my
pilot.
my number one choice, and I got my number one choice. And so I was super excited. I was down. We call it short. Are you short? Are you down to a small number of days? So I was down to about 60 days, which is getting short, in the military as far as change of duty station. And I was a little high strung in those days. I was
Understatement.
and so I'm at the barracks one day, and my boss and my boss's boss show up.
Okay.
And they're like, Mike, we got some news for you. You're acting like they were going to give me, my mother died or something like that, but they just didn't want me, destroying anything. And they said, well,
Sit down.
they canceled your orders to McCord, and they're sending you to Nellis Air Force Base, which is outside of Las Vegas.
Right.
And I was in the weapons field as munitions system specialist. And that was the worst base for us because it was just nonstop war games. That's where they do all the combat training.
Right.
Is done out of Nellis.
I would think you would
international
love that.
people come. No, because it's 7 days a week. You're 4 weeks a month. You spend your entire life doing that.
Wow.
And, you get a couple days off a month. I was used to having weekends off most of the time, and.
But you like to blow things up. This is the thing. I mean,
Well,
he
I was
still
already
does.
blowing
He
stuff
terrorizes
up.
our neighbors.
I was doing that regardless. So
Yeah, that's true.
That was the hobby.
It
that's
was
the
his
career
hobby.
field that I was in. So
Yeah.
what base I was at didn't make a difference.
It's funny. My dad grew up in Hawthorne, Nevada, and he would tell stories about going out and trying to find bombs out in the middle of the desert, trying to find, you go out and searching for or blowing stuff up, and and yeah, as a kid, I could see that being very fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, to have to do that 7 days a week and
Well, Guam was interesting in that regard. So I wasn't a sister career field was EOD.
okay,
Explosive Ordnance Disposal. Those are the guys that when somebody finds a bomb or something, they have to go, try and
Right.
disarm it, blow it up, whatever they have to do. And so Guam being an island, in the Pacific, right in the middle of World War II, of course, is just littered with
man.
unexploded ordnance.
Right.
And so anytime they go out and are creating a new area, a new road, or, doing some sort of development on the island, they just find all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
And Guam is famous for, I think it was in the late 70s or so, they found a Japanese soldier that was still on the island.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's where that
Still
was.
in
I've heard that
hiding,
story.
Wow.
Still thinking it was still the war was going on.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
it
I
had
heard
been like
that
30
story.
years
Yeah.
or something.
I remember the story. Like he never received the orders to stand down.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Oh man, that's
So
wild.
that's funny.
Wow. And so when were you at Nellis? When did you get
I didn't. Oh, yeah. So I didn't go.
Okay.
So one of the options you have is you can ask for an extension at your current duty station.
Okay.
And so I did that. So I was able to extend at Andersen in Guam, and they throw away your orders.
Okay.
You extend there. So I stayed for another year, and then got new orders again. And then that time, so I was there about 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got orders to Luke Air Force Base outside of Glendale.
Yeah.
That was God going, okay, you're going to go meet a girl.
You don't want that Nellis base, huh? Well, I'll show you.
Oh, okay. I see how it is.
Let
the fun begin.
That was beautiful. I just want to say that little exchange was amazing.
Right there is the complete and total package of what our marriage is. We mock each other, but he can mock me like nobody,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I laugh.
Yeah,
He
that's
is
good.
so funny.
So you go to Luke, and when was this at? When was?
I got here in July of '89.
Okay.
That's when I got married.
So I joined the Air
December
Force
89.
in '86.
Wow.
Okay. So 3 years.
And then came here in
ish.
'89, and I still had a couple 2.5 years left or so until December of '92.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're working at Luke, and you're getting married.
And I'm
Kirsten.
getting married. So he had 4 years to wait
And
for me.
And were you here in Arizona at that time?
No, let's see. We got married in Salt Lake and moved to McCord Air Force Base
but
in
her
Washington.
husband, when they met, was
Oh, he was at pilot training here at
Williams Air Force Base across the valley.
Yeah, which is now ASU East.
Right.
Yeah, so
That's
Williams Gateway, as they call it now.
Right.
But
Yeah,
you know,
we
us
were
old
ships
folks,
passing in the night. He and I were.
we call it Willie.
Willie.
You know, for
Yeah.
Williams Air Force Base is what it used to
Oh
be.
my goodness, I
I
forgot
have
that.
my wife's husband, me, no. My wife's father worked at and I can't remember the name of the base. It's in Omaha. Oh my gosh, the big
Yes, I'll note if you say it.
Yeah.
But,
So
anyway.
will I.
yeah, it's very famous because it's where they have a special place for the president to go there. My understanding is, and it's got a special strategic command center or something. Anyway, and so there's a lot of Air Force
is it
people.
Offutt?
Offutt, I think that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
but they so he worked there, but so another friend of mine actually knew Williams Field, and so she came down, and this is when Williams Field was all torn up. And go, oh, that was our house, and there's nothing that, this is back before ASU East took over. Anyway, that's got a little insider baseball for you non-Arizona folk listening. But
And you're really old, by the way, if you call it Williams Field.
Yeah.
That was pre calling it
Willie.
the Air Force Base.
The Air
as
Force-
Williams Field.
Luke Field.
Luke Field.
Right. Yeah. That's wild. So you get married in Salt Lake, Kirsten, and
Moved to Washington.
moved to Washington, and your husband was at Williams.
Yeah, he was there for 2 years during pilot training.
Okay.
And then when he graduated, he got his second wish, which was McCord. He wanted to fly heavies. So he was in the MAC unit, and he flew 141s. And then he was offered early out. And at that time, our marriage was just completely on the rocks. But we were trying to make a go of it, and we ended up moving back to Utah. And I think we made it another year after that. And then I moved back to Washington.
Okay.
And a series of events led me back here to Arizona.
Okay. So let's talk. Let's stretch out our time frames. We kind of did the collapse of time frame. So let's stretch it out a little bit. So let's talk. Pre you guys meeting. Let's talk. I'm interested in like mindset. Like were you guys looking for somebody? Like, how did that all happen? Talk about, pre, the day of.
I was not looking for somebody. I was having fun dating. I was not interested in having a relationship, although I would say I was dating a guy who was part of my band at the time.
Well, let's synchronize the time frame now.
So that would have been
what
1994.
years are we talking about?
That I would have been 1994 through 1996. Those were the 2 years that I was single before I married Mike.
Okay.
So George and I had gotten divorced, and then he and I actually kind of still dated after the divorce. And then there was that whole twin gate thing. He had his second set of twins get born by somebody else other than his wife. And so that kind of put the kibosh on that.
Meanwhile, I left the Air Force at the end of 92.
Okay. And you were never married.
I was never married,
Okay.
and I had started going to college while I was here. Realized, hey, it's pretty cheap tuition in Arizona. I'm a resident since I've
Right.
been here for a couple of years, so I'll just stay, finish my degree at ASU, and then I'll take off.
And
That was my plan.
What were you studying?
Double E, electrical engineering.
Okay. Electrical engineering. Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just going along in college while she's going through divorce, and
Yeah.
we're trucking along.
And I'm dating and having a good time. Had, like I said, I started dating one of my guitarists, and I really liked this guy. He was a great guy. I wasn't active in my church at that time, and he wasn't a member of my church. Didn't really have any direction, although I really liked this guy, and it drove me nuts that he wouldn't commit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is wrong with me? But I'm having fun dating all these other guys. And I'm like, well, if you're not going to be my boyfriend, then I'm going to date. Now,
Yeah.
he wasn't dating anybody else. He was only dating me, but he just wouldn't commit. So then I met Mike. I was actually with my kind of sort of not boyfriend at Bennigan's.
And I'm not dating anybody at this point. I'm not really.
He was waiting for
I'm
me.
not really dating.
Yeah.
Right. I was a very singular mindset,
Focus on.
and I wasn't interested in relationships.
Yeah.
So I was kind of a jerk, kind of a, clubber.
Well, he was a bartender. He was seeing the worst of women.
Doing the club thing and just doing the little, one-nighters or, things like that. I wasn't interested in having a girlfriend.
Right.
And that
would just tie you down. You were focused on what
yeah,
you wanted to do.
it just wasn't the stage of my life.
Yeah.
Where I was looking for any sort of relationship.
Okay.
I was just focused on my school. I was trying to get that done. Paying out of my pocket. I got a limited time, limited budget. And having fun.
Yeah.
At the bars and stuff. And
then he goes to a different bar, Bennigan's, and he's with his friends. I'm there with my friends. And he looks over and he sees me, and a light comes down over my head.
Just talk about
and he
this
says,
light,
"Who is
Mike?"
that redhead?" But one of my friends knew one of his friends, and she went over to talk to them. And he's like, "Who's that redhead over there?" And about that time, my not boyfriend decided that he was tired and just wanted to go home.
Whoops.
So, mistake. And so then I was
There's a first
introduced to
baseman that had
Michael.
the same issue back in the 30s. Anyway, good.
So I met Mike, and he's this 6'6", good-looking guy with this gorgeous chestnut, wavy hair, green eyes that he still to this day thinks is blue because his driver's license says they're blue. I'm like, you're the one that
birth certificate
wrote.
says they're blue.
You're the one that put your.
I didn't write that, did I?
He has green eyes, and they're lovely. And so I'm thinking, okay, he's cute. He and his friends were going back to one of their apartments to play darts. And so they asked me if I wanted to go. I said, sure.
None of whom she knew.
It's all right. I knew they weren't axe murderers. I wasn't going to wind up in body parts in their freezer or anything.
She knew people that knew them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew they were good. And so we had fun. And then he says, this just to this day kind of irks me that I fell for it. But he said, "Hey, so if you want to call me sometime, you can call me at my work where I'm bartending." Stupid me. I'm like, okay. Normally, I'm more old-fashioned than that. But, I guess this is 1995. And so I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm a modern girl. He gives me his work phone number, and I wait a couple of days.
Of course, not your home number.
I don't think I gave her my number at all. I think she just looked up the phone number for.
I
told her where I worked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Applebee's.
So, yeah,
I was a bartender at the big fancy Applebee's bar.
So I gave him what he wanted. I called him and made him feel
Careful how you
important.
say that.
And that's not what I meant. I made him feel all sorts of good about himself that I called him, and we went on our first date somewhere in Scottsdale. Was it Hops?
Hops. That was my first date spot.
Hey.
Date spot. It was a great place, and they closed it down. But so
good.
we're there, and here we are. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So he is like devil's advocate from hell. Everything I said, it didn't matter if he would have wholeheartedly agreed with it. He had to disagree just to be contrary. And I was so irritated. Then he finds out that I'd grown up Mormon.
Yeah.
Here I am sitting with a glass of wine in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And he says, well, you're nothing but a hypocrite. And I said, I take a swig of wine, I take a draw on my cigarette, and I said, I don't think you understand what the word hypocrite means. So that's how we started out. And then he says at the end of the night, well, you want to go out again? And I said, sure. So we go out the second time.
Brilliant.
And we're at another bar. And I'm not only irritated
She
about...
left out the part where she kissed me.
Okay, you know what? He loves to do this. He kissed me. I did not kiss guys on the first date, but he came at me. I was being nice. I was kind of cornered. I was in the corner. There's nowhere to go. But he was cute. So anyway, the second date, he is just as Mary Contrary as he was before, only this time now he's wearing the most irritating outfit. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, I'm not only irritated by everything he's saying to me, I'm irritated about what he's wearing. He was wearing teal colored boat shoes from early 1990s.
It was the early 1990s.
No, it was not. It was end of. Actually, they were more like
No, it
80s.
wasn't end, no.
And he's 6'6", mind you. He's got legs for days. And he's wearing these little shorts
They were
teal,
Docker shorts. I remember
acid
that.
washed from the 80s. And he's wearing a long sleeved white and teal striped shirt. The buttons.
See how I matched? Huh?
Okay, fine.
What
He
could
matched.
go wrong?
The fact
there.
she remembers all, I mean, this is true love.
Because it drove me nuts. I
Or
wanted
just
to. I
The
wanted
gender.
to.
Right.
I wanted
it's
to
true.
just redo him right there. But there was nothing I could do about him constantly coming at me with an opposing whatever, And so then he asked me out
So I
again.
have a question. What did you find so attractive about that?
The only answer I can say for this is because, and this is kind of like quite the thing that we argue about still to this day about the first couple of weeks that I didn't like him. He's like, that's not possible.
She's saying that. I didn't like.
Okay,
But you kept.
but I did kiss him,
you
yes.
kept
But
dating
and I
me.
did keep doing it. But here's the thing. God knew we were meant to be together. And I guess the only thing is that there were angels like orchestrating madly around us. That's all I can think.
Let's talk about that just for a second, because as my friends would, in fact, my friends used to hide things from me because I come from a family where my dad was a smoker, my absentee father, right? My parents
Right.
were divorced and never saw him. And he was a chain smoker and a drinker and alcoholic. And so I hated that. And I particularly hated smoking and I hated smokers. I
Okay.
didn't want to be around. And so my friends, they would try and get me to date one of their friends or something like that. And they'd actually hide. There was, girls that they had me go out with where they hid from me. They
The
didn't
fact-
tell. Yeah. Like I wouldn't
Like
be
you
able to
can't
tell
smell it.
just by smelling them or
Yeah.
kissing them, So I was militant. I didn't give you the time of day. I didn't give you the second date if somehow you snuck in there with a first date.
Yeah.
And yet, as she described, or she's sitting there with her cigarette and a glass of wine in one hand, telling me how the gospel is true.
He's showing, you can't
You
see
know?
this, but he's like
Oh, yeah.
trying to act like me on that day. That's not what I
He's
look
definitely
like.
pantomiming.
I look way
Just
cuter
slurring
than
her
that.
words,
Just so you know,
the
that's
gospel
not
is true,
slurring her words.
Gosh.
And it's just like either she's the biggest idiot in the world, right?
Right.
Or this is something that she really believes, that she could sit here and look the fool,
Yeah.
telling me how
wild.
something's true while she's sitting here smoking and
church, yeah.
drinking in front of me,
That's fabulous.
And so
Yeah.
and so I could see in that, I could see in her eyes, I could see in her spirit that was truth.
Huh.
And that she wasn't she didn't want to be that person either. I could tell that.
Right.
She didn't want to be that smoker. She didn't want to be that drinker. And I could see that in her. And in fact, as we become engaged, is rather quickly within, months, 4 or 5 months or whatever it was. And there was even times where, okay, she's going to quit smoking. We're both going to quit drinking,
Yeah.
somewhere, I don't know, 6 months before we were getting married or something like that, 4 or 5 months before, whatever it was. And there was times where she slipped and it really aggravated me. And, and I let her know,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
but again, I could see it. I knew she didn't,
Right.
It's,
You knew,
it's,
you
it's
knew
hard.
who she
It's hard to
was
quit
and-
smoking, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, let
So-
me interject something here because
Please.
this is what changed it for me. So I was still dating this other guy, Jeff, and had been dating some other guys, and I was enjoying playing the field. I wasn't making out with all these people. I did kiss him. But the weird thing is about 3 or 4 weeks into dating, I am warming to him because, like I say, he's gorgeous. He's smart. He's witty. Yes,
And
he
I
challenged
don't
me,
do
but
that,
I
by the
kind
way.
of liked that.
I don't date multiple. It just wasn't a thing I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just thought, okay, I'm
was
gonna
casual dating for me.
give this person a chance, and then I'm gonna give the next person a chance. You know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying?
Yeah.
And he asked me, he said, so are we exclusive? I actually kind of almost laughed because at that time I was like, no, far from it. But then it was a few days later after that he said if you never give me the chance, you're never going to know. And it was between that and then him telling me, because the reason why, when I said to him on our first date, I don't think you understand what the word hypocrite means. I then told him that while I could recognize that the gospel principles that existed in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were true and good, I didn't feel worthy of living that life because of the background I had come from. So, he had talked a little bit about his father being an alcoholic. I grew up in a very unhappy home, and there was a lot of trauma for me. And so I had so many walls up. I mean, this was ironclad. And as much as I dreamed growing up about having my own family, my husband who would never hurt me, children that I would protect and I would love and they would love me and it would be perfect. Having gone through that first divorce, and it was kind of a traumatic experience, and other trauma, I kind of preferred to keep things somewhat loose, yet I still had it in the back of my mind that I wanted that family.
Right.
And yet I think I thought something was wrong with me. And so he said to me one day that he looked into my eyes and he saw who I really was. That stalled me. Stalled me, stop. I couldn't even think or process anything because it was like, he can see that there's something good in me. And this is the honest truth. I felt the Spirit so strongly, and it said, this is a good man. So here's the deal. We get engaged. We end up getting married. And those first several months were so surreal. It would, I'd be watching the clock. It's ticking down to 5 o'clock. I know that within a half hour, he's going to be coming home, and that's my husband. I'm married. I'm married to this man.
Yeah.
Yet I was not in love with him. I was not in love with him when I married him. He didn't know this. I never said any of this to him. In fact, I kept a lot of what had happened in my life, my childhood and all of that, private. And so for years, I prayed and I had faith that I would fall in love with my husband. But what I did was, and it may feel awkward for anyone listening to this, for me to be very honest about this. It was probably 6 years ago that I finally told him all of this. He didn't know, I don't think. I felt like an alien who'd been abandoned on Earth, and I'm wearing my human skin suit, my Edgar suit, and I'm watching other couples. I watched them obsessively to see how they interacted, how the women touched their husbands, how they touched them, the things that they said, and then I duplicated that. The truth of the matter is I was fond. I was so fond of him. I knew he was such a good guy. He was so funny. He was so intelligent. In fact, funny story is you're talking about his military experience and then the fact that he liked to blow stuff up. One day, I think we had been married for about 6 months. I'm cleaning out the closet, and he had his computer on a little table in the closet, kind of a weird height, out of the way kind of place.
Right.
And I see this floppy
we're in a
disk.
small 2-bedroom apartment,
That's
so
true.
I didn't have an
place,
office.
Yeah, it's the only place he could have it.
Yeah.
So I
But
built a
there's
little
this-
computer stand in the closet.
There's this floppy disk back in the day that said, I think,
Cobra.
Cobra.
Oh, no, you're right.
Viper?
It was Viper. Well, it was both of those projects, but yeah, it was Viper.
Something. And I don't remember what triggered me, but then all of a sudden, this story about the Unabomber, and there was something about Cobra or Viper or something in that
No, it wasn't
story.
the Unabomber. There was a group that was planning to blow up the train. Remember the train tracks here in Arizona?
Yeah.
They were planning explosives or something underneath like a little bridge thing or something like that.
But I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm married to this guy.
This Viper group was the name. And so, yeah. So she thought I was
my
a member
goodness.
of
I thought maybe
the
that's
Viper
what it
group.
is. That's what's keeping me from being in love. He's really evil.
You're shutting the computer down.
Yeah, so I was kind of freaked out for a little bit. And then when I had to finally come out and ask him, you're not like a terrorist or anything,
You're
right?
not gonna blow up a train.
But it's still, it took me all these years. And so in between this time, were trying to have a baby. In fact, because I never could get pregnant in the first marriage, and we knew it wasn't my first husband's fault.
It wasn't Jorge.
It wasn't his fault.
There's 4 kids.
We knew that it was me. So we hit the ground running with fertility from the get-go. Years and years of injections and tests and operations, whatever. Him having to go through his part,
Which is
me
not
having
great
to go
for
through
your
it.
sexual relationship.
It's not.
The
spontaneity is
when you have
out
a
the window.
schedule, and
And even if you're having a fight, but
Right.
if you're ovulating, you
Fa-
lay in bed and you're mad at each other.
famously, she leans over
All right,
and
sorry
says,
for this, people. Here it comes.
"Are you ready yet?"
I just wanted it done and over with. Yeah, you can't.
I don't
you
want to
don't
go
start
into
off
the
that way.
physiology of the human body, but it doesn't work like
exactly.
Oh.
I have a question before you go on there. By the way, this is just as fascinating. I'm loving this. But Mike, she's talking about how closed off she was, and how how emotionally or she really didn't feel that closeness, that love. Did you feel that from her? Like, what was your experience during that time?
I probably didn't notice a whole lot. I think I had my own
Issues,
emotional baggage. I would say that I don't know the proper term, but
Emotionally retarded.
well, I was
is how I
trying
used
not to
to
use
view
that
it.
word, but
Well, no, that's the word. He was stunted.
Okay.
He was
Yeah.
stunted with his ability
I was raised, like I say, in a divorced home, and
Mhm.
then my father, who I call my father now, my stepfather, he didn't raise us as kids, so he was just a stern, kind of cold, and I don't remember saying I love you or hearing my mother say I love you. Until my 20s, I think on the phone when I would say it, it just wasn't. I mean, she's very,
wasn't part of
very,
your
very
culture.
loving mother,
Yeah.
but she was a single mom for several years, raising 3 kids, with a deadbeat dad who wasn't really helping out, and she's working. She did an awesome job, but that just wasn't. We just weren't a vocally and
they weren't
emotional
demonstrative.
family. Yeah,
There wasn't
yeah.
a lot of touching and
Yeah. So I think I was just, and then having my father not there, I just think I had a
he wasn't cold
certain
by any means.
Right, but he didn't
emotionally stunted or something.
He didn't necessarily recognize that you were struggling. Maybe.
Because he wasn't.
I didn't know
me,
what it
really.
was. Right. I didn't know
No
what true
difference.
love is.
I'm glad to know that, though, because I've never really asked that question. So I'm glad that you asked that, because I think that would have broken my heart. But that's why I tried so hard to act like normal.
Mm.
And I think the reason why I'm a very tactile person, like I have to touch, because I shut off that ability to feel and have people come in to my walls because people hurt you. And so I didn't know when I'd have a connection, when I'd feel something with him. So I was constantly touching him, and he wasn't a demonstrative person. And like I say, he's still contrary, that would set me off a little bit. And he would inadvertently, just innocently say words or do things that triggered me because they brought back memories of certain things. And he wouldn't know why I'm spazzing out. Well, so just in a little brief bit of honesty here, I used to have panic attacks in my first marriage,
Okay.
intimacy wise. When I married Mike and we had waited to be married, he was baptized into our church the week before we got married. But about 2 or 3 months into our marriage, and I'm thinking the panic attacks were things that happened in the past. It wasn't going to happen with him.
Right. It had to do with him, not.
It had to, it had to do with the other guy.
Right.
One night it happened while we were being intimate, and I mean it scared me so bad that it happened with him that I literally ended up out of bed in the corner on the floor sobbing, and I was shaking so bad I couldn't. And here he is going, I don't even know what's going on.
Right.
He had no idea. So
He's trying to get a little lucky,
he's trying to get lucky, and his wife is freaking out. I ended up then sleeping in the other room for 2 years. And then over the course of, I don't know how many years, we then are going through fertility, which further erodes the intimacy. And our sex life it had been pummeled. And yet this man, this amazing, beautiful man, he has such integrity. It never would have even occurred to him to go elsewhere. He stayed true to me and never made me feel bad. I mean, the one thing that he ever said about it, and he made a joke, but like I say, his sense of humor just cracks me up. We're out to dinner one night in Scottsdale, looking at the shops, and I stopped and looked in the window and I said, "Oh man, I'd love to have those shoes." And he goes, "Well, I'd like to have sex. We all want things." And I laughed. That was the only thing he ever said. He was so good about it. But I'm going to get raw.
Okay.
I hope this is okay.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. It's real, right?
It's real. So we had been married by this time 5 years, I think. And I'm at work. I worked in a healthcare center, and I was having a bad day. I just was concerned about my marriage. And even though I wasn't in love, I loved him. And I knew I had a good man. I was terrified of losing him because I still had faith and hope that one day it would all open up in me and everything would be great. So I'm in the office and I'm crying my eyes out, and my coworker comes in. She's not LDS. She sits down and she says, "Oh, honey, tell me what's going on." And she says, "I can tell you're having a bad day." And so I just unloaded on her and I said, "I'm afraid I'm going to lose my husband. We have relations maybe once or twice a year, this poor guy." And she says, "You know what? You're off early today. You should go to the store, buy yourself something pretty and frilly and light the candles in the house, get a bottle of wine, surprise your husband when he gets home." And I said, "Well, I'm Mormon. We don't drink. I can't do that." And she's like, "Well, if you want to save your marriage, maybe you're going to have to do that tonight." So I sat on that. And thought about that and thought, I can't do that. Well, I get off work. I go to Dillard's. I buy something pretty and frilly. I come home. I set the stage. I've got the candles lit. And I have a bottle of wine that I bought. And I carry in 2 glasses of wine, a bottle of wine. I put out the 2 glasses and the bottle of wine on the dresser, and I light the candles, and I'm laying in my little frilly thing on the bed waiting for him to come home. I hear him coming in, shuts the door, and then I hear he goes, "Oh." And
See, I'm thinking I don't remember this at all. I was like, wow, it's either going to go one way or the other.
Right.
It's going to go really well, or there's somebody else in my house, because I don't think that's my wife. So I hear him come down the hall, and I'm just verklempt at this time. I'm scared. I'm freaking out. He comes in and he does this. He puts his fists up by his mouth, grins at me, and kind of does this little happy dance. And he must see the panic look on my face or something. And he kind of gives me this odd look. And then I kind of reach out and I gesture for him to turn and look at the dresser. He turns and he looks and he sees the 2 wine glasses and the bottle of wine. And it's like I watched the air come out of him. And his shoulders slumped. And he just gave me the saddest look. And I'll tell you what, like that broke my heart, because I felt he's disappointed in me. And so he walked over to the dresser and he picks up a glass of wine. He picks up the bottle. And I thought, I can't. He's going to come and he's going to bring me a glass of wine, like, "Here's your medicine, broken woman." Yeah. And I couldn't tolerate the thought of him doing that. But what he did was he picked up both glasses and he came over to me and he poured a glass and handed it to me. And then he poured himself a glass. Let me tell you, for 2 LDS people that don't drink, who've been through the temple and we're living every covenant that we're asked to, for him to do this for me and not make me feel broken, to understand where I was to get to that point. That made me so grateful for him. And I felt something kind of start to thaw a little bit.
Wow.
And in answer to everyone's question, yes, we had a great night. I was out of my head. I mean, not out of my head, but you know what I'm saying? I was able to let all that go. Men have the little blue pill. There's nothing that has been invented for women that can help us to deal with the things that we've got going on. So that was my blue pill.
Yeah.
And
I don't use the little blue pill.
Just for the record?
Just for the record.
I'm so sorry, y'all. So this just illustrates the kind of man that he is. Yes, he is a true and worthy priesthood holder, but he did not make me feel guilty. And you know what? We felt right with God in what we did. Now, fast forward all these years, so we get to, year 17, I think. We've got this beautiful daughter that we've adopted, and by this time she's 15, I think. I think we had a really bad fight, and it kind of scared him a little bit. It scared me. I'm in Utah, getting away, and I'm kind of avoiding him. We end up talking on the phone one night, and he says, I don't know that we're going to be able to make it in this life together. And he says, but I want you to know that I want you in eternity. And if it means that I have to wait for you to be free of all the things that you've gone through and the walls and everything, he says, then I'll wait for that.
Yeah, I need to interrupt because this is important, but I don't want to stop the story, but I'm really curious about that, Mike, from your perspective. Like, what did that mean to you? Like, what were you trying to express? And to her, like, why was that important for you to tell her that?
Well, I guess I just knew. And I took our covenants seriously, that she was my eternal companion. And while there might be some things in this life that mean maybe we can't stay together, we can't overcome some challenges, and maybe it's better for us as human beings that we just can finish our lives separate, here on earth. But I had no interest in, finding another woman, and certainly not being sealed to another woman.
Yeah. So for you, it sounds like you were saying, like, this is way bigger than like our marriage is bigger than even this life. Like, our marriage is a bigger.
I'd never thought of it in that way. Ever. Yeah. I thought if we don't make it through this life, that's it. I didn't even consider that there was another option. And that, when he said this, I realized he's who I want in the eternities. And so, yes, I felt like, okay, I may be too broken in this life. He may have his own issues that we just can't come together. But when we're free of these sick bodies that we've got, these bodies that have gone through so much in eternity, that's my man. Right. I'm his woman. And that was so beautiful to me. And it was kind of neat because for the next couple of years, we had this, like, we both were trying harder. Our communication became better.
So that broke even, like that.
It melted me a little bit.
More.
There were several layers of those walls.
Yeah.
That went away with that conversation. Now, okay.
Would you say that you were, like, trying to put you back in that time? Would you say that you loved him at that point?
No, I always loved him. Right. I wasn't in love.
In love. Okay.
No, still not there yet.
Okay.
Still not there yet. But warming.
Yeah.
Warming, feeling like it's there.
17 years in, we're getting warm.
We're getting warm. The prelude is still going on, but the play's about to start. I felt like it was coming. I felt like I felt like it was worth hanging in there for because it's on the horizon. So what's beautiful, and again, y'all, I'm sorry, but there's something that happens when a woman gets into her 40s. It's called midlife libido kick. I'd heard it happened in the 30s, waited for it to come, never happened. And then again, I'm out of town for, I think, a week. And then before I get back into town, he has to go to scout camp. So he's going to be gone for a week. Somewhere in the middle of all that, my body started to work. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm looking at his picture and I'm like, gosh, he's hot. And then I'm thinking, it's like 3 more days until he gets home. And I've never experienced these feelings before. I thought movies lied. I'd hear my girlfriends talk and I'm like, they're all lying. That does not happen. And so he texts me and he says, well, hey, I'm on my way home. I've got the scouts in the car. And I'm like, yippee! Yes! And so I start to planning and okay, all right, here we go. Getting real again. I did something I never did before and I took a little bit of a selfie. It was artistic and beautiful, and it was not icky. But I sent it to him. The poor man almost wrecked his truck. I think the phone ended up on the floor, and one of the scouts picked it up, and thank heavens it went black. But, yeah, because he'd never seen that from me before. Right. He's like, I don't even know who this woman is. But I'm on my way home. So then, meanwhile, I'm here at the house and, getting the candles in the place, and I'm telling my daughter, oh, gosh, I'm so tired. Oh, I think I'm going to hit the sack early, hoping that it's going to be catchy. Like if you sneeze, it'll make her sneeze. She says, oh, yeah, I'm really tired. I think I'm going to go to bed early again. Yippee! And she goes to bed, and I text Mike, and I said, go to the gym, get a shower, because, y'all, when you walk in, you're getting attacked. Yeah. Better be clean. So he gets a shower at the gym. Gabby's gone to bed. The planets are aligning. I hear the door open downstairs. And then I hear my daughter's door crack open, and I'm like, "No! Go back to bed!"
I had a really loud truck. So I had this old Dodge Diesel with 4-inch loud pipes, and you could hear that. You could hear that.
Cool until it's not.
Until you don't want her to wake up.
You could hear that thing rumbling down the road.
And she loves her daddy. Now they are peas and carrots, and so of course she's like, "Daddy!" And I'm like, oh, and he's going, Gabby. And so I'm praying, please just get it done, kiss her, send her off to bed. He did. He sent her off to bed. And then he comes in, and I'll tell you what, that was an amazing night. That was awesome. And it continued to be awesome for a year and a half of just wedded bliss. It was like we had just gotten married. And then he had his accident.
Okay, so
now this is
this is how many
5 years ago.
So 5 years ago, so about 20 years into your marriage. And things are going great. But you're saying you're still not in love.
Still not in love, but I'm kind of falling.
She's fond of me.
She's fond of you. Okay, we've gotten to the fond
I'm also
stage.
Physically majorly attractive to him.
For us guys, I was like, no different.
For us women, there is.
Right.
So I'm at the World Congress of Families, and I'm out of town, and I get a call. And I'm told that Michael was in a really bad motorcycle accident, that he was on life support and in a coma.
Wow.
And mind you, just 6 weeks before that, I had gone through some kind of weird thing where my leg stopped working. I was actually on stage at the time when this happened, and my band had to practically carry me off the stage. Like they just stopped working. And so I was pretty much paralyzed. And we didn't know what was happening, but he was so wonderful. He picked me up at the theater, literally carried me out to the car, put me in the car, carried me out of the car, up the stairs, this very strong man. And as he puts me on the bed, he goes, man, why did this have to happen just after you'd gained weight? So
I didn't say
he did say that. But again, I laugh because he can get away with it. He's funny. So over the course of 6 weeks, it took time for me to be able to get my legs back and to kind of walk to where I wasn't lurching. Weirdly.
What was the problem? Do you know?
We thought it was MS. We're still not sure. We're still trying to figure it out.
Went to
It hasn't
Mayo,
happened,
you know, had all the specialists and did all the imaging and tests and
Nothing.
torture.
Wow.
I mean, I have all the symptoms. I've got, you know, a lesion on my head. I've got a lesion on my spine. It's just that the lesion on my brain isn't as big. But, you know, he's been so wonderful to deal with all this. We've practically lived at Mayo doing all these different things. In fact, if you're wondering why I keep nose sniffing, is I just had surgery on my face 2 weeks ago at the Mayo. And so, you know, he's been great. He's lived with me being broken in all these different ways. But so just before his accident, I got to where I was, you know, walking and functional again. And when I got this phone call, I was like, why now? I mean, the sheer wrongness of this, that 20 years I fought and scraped to fall in love with this man. And just when I'm starting to, now God's going to take him away from me. My legs went out from under me and I thought, oh no, it's happened again. And I need to be up and getting to my computer so I can get home, get a flight, and my legs don't work. And I thought, because my mom was saying, you know, that he was on life support, she said the hospital chaplain is going to call. And I'm thinking, why is the chaplain going to call if he's still alive?
Yeah.
I thought that they weren't telling me the truth because they didn't want me to know until I got home. So I get on the flight. I get home. Meanwhile, my sister had picked up my daughter from school, brought her to the airport, didn't tell her. My daughter's mystified, you know, why is mom home early? Further mystified when mom gets in the back seat with her. And I put my arms around her and she could read on my face that something's wrong.
Yeah.
And when I told her, she said, well, is he dead? And I didn't know what to tell her. My phone, I don't know if I had it in airplane mode or what, but I hadn't received anything.
Right, you didn't know yet.
And so I just said, we're going to pray, honey. We're just going to pray. And so we prayed. And then as we got on the freeway, the pings started coming. And at that point, now I'm in touch with the bishop, and he's saying, you know, hey, I'm with him. He actually looks pretty good. So I'm like, okay, he's alive.
Yeah.
And miracle of miracles, we get to the hospital just as he's coming out of a coma.
Whoa.
And they're extubating him. Now, here's the thing. The way that he was ejected off of his motorbike into the back of this huge government vehicle, and the way that he hit...
DEA agent.
which was a blessing because he was immediately able to get on and get help there. So the way that he hit, though, 95% of those cases end up being an internal decapitation at the C2. He should have been dead right there. The other miracle was that the 700-pound Harley that landed on top of him when he bounced back didn't crush him. The other miracle is that it didn't burn him because the exhaust was on that side. But the first responder, this police officer, thought he was dead. Everyone we have the ADT shot of the accident. Everyone's just standing around looking at him.
That will be the thumbnail. I'm just kidding.
Right. I mean, it's really,
well, in fact,
it's crazy.
He saw from my garments that I was LDS.
Yeah.
And from my phone, I had the
ponderizing scripture.
The ponderizing. I had a scripture on my phone. And so he saw that I was LDS.
And as he's holding the phone.
And so he's like, you know, I've been on a ton of these. I said that, you know, he's thinking this is not going to end well. So I would like the bishop to be involved with the notification of his family.
Wow. He was actually LDS,
and not
the
have
officer was,
and not have a policeman show up at her door.
Wow.
And so he called his bishop, gave his bishop my name, and then the bishops have their tools, you know, where they have access, where they can do searches, and he was able to find my bishop.
But hold on. Because while he's holding the phone and he realizes that this is a scripture from the Book of Mormon on his lock screen, my text comes across. And he sees the text from the wife that says, hey, sweetheart, I love you. Just thinking about you. Have a great day. And he's like, Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to tell, she's going to find out that her husband's dead.
Yeah.
So at that time, because he thought that he was. Well, another really cool thing is that it turns out that this officer is in my sister's ward.
No way.
Yeah. So, I mean, just so many cool
but
things.
the blessing of that is that my bishop was able, well, first of all, or somebody at the bishopric, he was actually out running.
Right.
And so Bob, one of his counselors, got called and had to come over to my house. He just
tell my
dreaded
mom
that.
she lives with us.
Luckily, Kirsten wasn't home, so he just had it. So he told her mother. And because of that early notification at 8:30 or whatever it was in the morning,
I was able to get here.
She was able to get notified and able to get a flight and to get here.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten here until the next day.
Before Gabby got out of school.
Which, oh my gosh.
Because otherwise, Gabby would have got
So
out of
many
school
miracles.
and had a father in a coma
And no mom.
and no mom.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine what that would have done to that poor young girl.
Wow.
And then to so at the time they'd been doing the imaging of my brain. There was a brain bleed. So okay, we gotta put them in a coma because their hearts tend to stop when you have this hematoma in the brain or whatever. So it's better to put them in a coma where they can put me on life support and in case
control everything.
Yeah. And then they were, I don't know, redoing something, and he said, it's not as big as we originally thought. We think it's okay. It's so safe to bring him out of the coma.
Okay.
And that was right as we're pulling into the parking lot that he's being extubated and waking up.
And it's no accident that I had a blessing by my bishop, who's my friend as well. You know, that morning, and
what?
I was wearing my garments, and I didn't have any. I had some scrapes. I had a messed up ankle. I had to have surgery on my ankle.
Compound fracture.
But seriously,
but I have an air cooled Harley Davidson with two pipes on the side that was on top of me.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't have a single burn on me.
Whoa.
So that was a pretty lucky morning.
I would
just
say.
such a blessing that our daughter and I, when we got there, he's loopy as all get out, but she was able to see him without all of that. And like I say, his appearance looked fine, some road rash, and by that time his leg was completely bound up. But it was,
but definitely not what you were imagining.
I thought it was going to be
there was zero
train
trauma
wreck
to the face.
Wow.
Other than my eye, being messed up, but no physical injury.
Yeah.
Right. It was all nerve damage and stuff.
It was such a miracle. But there's something that's really beautiful because he had a really long recovery process. So he was in the trauma ICU for about a week. You would think that they'd have enough staff to be able to watch him because he was so out of it, and he had a brain damage. He had brain damage. He kept wanting to rip off the leads and try and escape, but he had pins up his leg, and if he would have stepped on it and put his weight on it, he would have shattered his leg from the inside.
And did you know you were doing this, or was this just
he was out of it.
Yeah, you were just.
No.
Yeah.
He is.
I have no memory for the first couple weeks.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm there as often as I could be, stay in the night. And anyway, he's hallucinating. There were some really hilarious things, going on. Oh my goodness. At one time he's hallucinating that I have a tail.
Well medicated.
Another time,
the good stuff, huh?
he had the good stuff. Another time he is hallucinating that there's airplanes taking off from his feet, and he's irate about it. And he's so tall that they can't find pants to put on him that fit. So he's just in a Johnny, and he's like flashing my poor sister who's sitting at the end of the bed. And it was hilarious. But I stayed there, and here I am taking care of him, keeping him in bed, taking care of him like he's a little baby. And that level of service is so beautiful. You fall in love, and you fall in love hard. But the hard thing was my poor little baby girl, who's, like I say, she's like 14 and a half at this time.
And
she's having a breakdown at home, calling me, Mom, please, I need you, come home. And I'm split. I want to be with my baby, but I have to also be with my husband. And that was just the worst place to be in. So over the weeks, he gets moved from ICU upstairs. He's there for another week, I guess, before he gets moved into a rehabilitation center. And it was heartbreaking to see this big, strong guy looking at puzzles and being asked by the therapist, okay, now, and he's, gesturing to a sheep. What is this? And I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what sound this animal makes? I don't know.
A big, strong guy who's brilliant, who's an electrical engineer. Wow.
It was horrible to see him go through this. But like I say, when you take care of somebody and you serve them like that.
There was zero trauma on me. I had nothing but, I had some pins in my leg, but aside from that, I didn't know anything. I didn't know I wasn't answering, correctly. I'm not feeling any really trauma from the accident. I've got a couple bumps and bruises, couple scrapes.
You're just like,
But so I don't. So the accident wasn't traumatic to me physically. It was more just knowing the guilt associated with the impact that it had on Kirsten and Gabby.
Wow. Yeah.
But it was amazing because we learned strength that we never knew we had. And I grew in my capacity to own responsibility. I mean, I had to get insurance in order. I had to, oh my gosh, it was, I never thought I had that kind of strength.
Mm.
And
then I say the thing that for us as well as just me in general is, for certain people, it's not easy to be served, right?
Right.
I think men are probably worse than most. Generally say, "Oh no, I'm good. I don't need help. No, I'm fine." You don't let people serve you.
Yeah.
People need to serve. And so I never let people serve you.
But he did then.
And now I'm having my wife has to help me with the most intimate details of my life, going to the bathroom and things like that, and then, and so then having our friends, build us things or hang swings out back or, a box to help me climb up the stairs when I come home. And, so just allowing my wife and others to serve me.
It was humbling.
It was a new experience for me. It was a humbling experience and just a learning experience.
And maybe it's because he was kind of out of it still with the drugs, but he'd be laying in his bed and I'd be across the room on the couch. And, you're hyper aware even in your very, very light sleep. Like I'm listening to every sound.
Yeah.
So I can be ready, to help him out. And I'd, come awake because I'd hear him stir and he'd be over there looking at me with his one good ear or with his one good eye. And he'd go, would you read something to me? So I'd read from the scriptures.
Yeah.
And then he would say something like, "You're so good to me," or "I like the sound of your voice," or whatever. And it was calming to him for me. And it was so great to feel appreciated and to be able to serve him in that way. But so he did beautifully and was so good to come through this. And I felt like it really made us stronger. But around this period of time, we started noticing that our sweet little girl wasn't doing well. She was riddled with anxiety, and then depression came.
In fact, there was and Gabby will actually tell you the date because I mentioned it once, and I'd come home from the hospital, and so it was sometime at the end of I mean, what year was that? 15? Is that when the accident? So somewhere around, December of 2015, when she first came, and she came to me, and I forget exactly how she said it, but basically she's saying, I'm sad all the time and I don't know why.
Wow.
And just anxiety.
So it's the first time that she's really articulated that she has some depression. She has some psychological things going on.
Right.
And mind you, she was surrounded by kids now at this new school that were all self-harming, into suicidal ideation, and this group got inside of her. Mm-hmm. So within a few months after him getting better and walking normally and all of that, that was a trying year for us. I found that she was self-harming. And so then we went through 2 years of watching her just sink and slowly slide away from us. She became angry. She wouldn't let me hug her. I went 2 years without even being able to touch my own child. And she had a friend that was just wreaking havoc in her life, and it was causing us stress in our marriage. Mm-hmm. And there were times that we were arguing so violently that inside I'm thinking, I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to walk out of this whole thing. I knew Gabby wouldn't stay with me because at that point she hated Mom, because Mom was checking her texts. Mom was being hyper vigilant. He's at work. He's trying to just get back into work and get his mind working again properly.
She sees you as the police officer, as the
Mom Nazi.
Yeah.
And so I've become the bad guy.
I hated those calls in the morning that I get from either Kirsten or from Gabby.
We tortured him.
It was just, so I just try and block it out, just trying to ignore it, as much
and I
as
envied him to be able to be away from it, because I never was away from it. And I felt
you're going from like crisis to crisis to, he has his work, and
I resented both of them. Mm. And the irony that we had gone from this beautiful plateau where I was seeing beauty coming into my life, and I'm opening up to him and to my daughter in these beautiful ways. And then it just crashed on us. Right. I felt like the universe had just ripped the rug out from underneath me, and I was angry. And so that really took a toll on our marriage. We were blessed to be able to put our daughter through the Anasazi program. That's a whole other podcast there. If you ever have parents that want to hear about this.
But that's part of the story as well. So again, beautiful program. It's a
wilderness therapy.
Yeah, wilderness therapy program where basically they go on the trail for 8 weeks, solid, live on the trail, make fire with sticks.
Yeah.
Carry their food, which is bags of flour and rice and beans and
primitive
sugar and salt, and they make their own meals. And it's just wonderful. Well, the beautiful thing about the Anasazi program is they call it's the walking of we. Mm-hmm. It's not, hey, dump your kid off, come pick up your kid in 8 weeks,
party.
And we'll fix her.
And they're fixed.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
and then you guys get to go do whatever you want to do.
There's no fixing here.
Yeah.
We're going to help them, teach them some tools, but this is the walking of we, and here's your work. Mm-hmm. Mm. And they gave us a book, and they gave us a workbook in addition to the book.
Okay.
There were things that we needed to do every day.
There's things we're doing every day. Like, one day we had to go live in the backyard or sleep in the backyard. And
just to experience being out with no pillows, nothing.
Have no lights on in the house. And, just trying to feel and empathize a little bit with what she's going through.
But there's also things that we had to do as husband and wife and preparations in our home to get ready for her coming back.
Which makes, it's interesting because that does make sense because obviously, like, the change has to, if it's going to be a change over time.
You can't do the same thing, right, and expect different results.
Exactly.
Right? Our definition of insanity, it just doesn't work.
And that change needed to come from the parents as well.
Yeah.
And so they give you this book called The Anatomy of Peace by the Arbinger Institute. And that's a book that we have to read. And so she said, Gabby and I didn't really have a bad relationship. Of the two of us, we had a good relationship still, even though she's going through these challenges and having these problems, but we still had a pretty good, I never had the anger or anything like that with her.
Right.
So going through the Anatomy Piece, was these teachings about, basically empathizing with people instead of treating people as objects, treating them as people, empathizing. Hey, that person that just cut you off, instead of shaking your fist and swearing at them and maybe zooming up and trying to block them or something like that, think, hey, maybe they're having a, really bad day. Maybe they're late for a doctor's appointment. Who knows?
That helped me a lot because I'm an angry driver.
You don't know what's going on.
Right.
But the moral of this story for me is that it wasn't about Gabby, the book with, about, because I had this, so we call it Heart of War versus Heart of Peace.
Okay.
Heart of War is when you're kind of thinking about yourself. You're angry, you're selfish, you're just thinking about,
or you're fearful.
Why is
That's
that
a heart
person?
of war.
Yeah, exactly. There's all these different emotions versus a Heart of Peace is where, you're helping others. You're worried about others and you're trying to help them, not so much about yourself.
I heard a beautiful definition of love being the love is willing the good of the other on their terms, and in spite of any consequences to you.
Yeah.
That sounds like that.
That's
theory.
So I recognized that I had these problems with Kirsten.
Mm.
And so even though it was a book and material that was supposed to be between us and our children,
right,
and helping
really
Gabby, for me, it was me and Kirsten.
What another miracle.
And it was me empathizing with Kirsten. It's like, you don't know what it was like with her in her childhood and the impact that her father had upon her, or the impact that her first husband had upon her, or the impact of anybody else. You don't know anything about, or you certainly don't know everything about people, especially about your spouse,
Yeah.
And so it just helped make me more empathetic. And then they have another book. I forget the name of the other book, but it's
Leadership and Self-Deception.
Yeah. So it's about,
I've read that book. That's a great book.
It's about self-deception and how you can. And so I found myself that I was doing that I'd be talking really calm. Now, Kirsten, why are you getting upset with me? Trying to basically show, hey, I have a heart of peace. See how calm I am?
Right.
And no, that's a total heart of war, right? I because the subtext of that is,
you're the problem.
You're the problem,
broken,
not me.
I'm trying to calm you down.
I'm fine, And so seeing that recognizing in myself that this self-deception about, my behavior and that really finally, I think, changed me completely to where I really tried to,
that's beautiful,
be more empathetic with her and really, I'm still not perfect. I still have to get better and better, but at least I recognize it now. Right.
Well, and what's interesting to me is because we've talked a lot today about like her needing to break down her walls, and about her like fixing her in a way to help save the marriage. And yet it's really what you're saying. What I'm hearing is that it was true for both of you, and you needed to recognize that as well. Is that am I accurate in that?
Yeah. I mean, I might not have had. Oh, who knows what sort of damage you have from your youth, right? I came from a broken family, and so.
Well, and
but
it
wasn't so.
Who knows?
Yeah, and the child's perception of
changed,
what's happened when they're a child, you don't know how to rectify that because you've grown up with this perception. It's cemented, and it isn't until you're an adult that you can now look back at it through an adult's eye and go, "Oh, I see this now." And so, this whole experience with Anasazi helped us, not just with our relationship, but it also helped us going backward and looking at our past and kind of piecing things together. When you said, "Wow, what a miracle," it really kind of hit me that maybe there was an intention that Gabby needed to go through this. Our family needed to go through this to strengthen us and bring us together. And that whole walking as a when she came off the trail, we are 3 years out of that now.
Yeah.
And we are so strong together. And she's still going through her issues. But you know what? She talks to us and she hugs us. It's like that. The relationship's there. She's not.
Which is
sometimes
she's
tells us
struggling.
things that we don't want to know.
Right.
But she's talking to us.
But at the same time, we're just thrilled that she's not afraid to tell us that, and that she wants to tell us that. She comes home and wants to tell us about something exciting that happened at work today, or something exciting happened with her friend, or whatever.
Right.
And so really quickly, it takes time. Anasazi, as you said, is not the fix. For anything. It was the fix, I think, for us, but what the final fix was.
Well, not the fix, but the tools, right?
It's
just
the
learning the
tools,
tools, learning the behaviors that can help us get through.
Yeah.
And he and I think we had the more immediate fixing, but we were still kind of learning. And we did hit a rough patch there when Gabby started self-harming, and there were some, there were some other things that started happening that we were arguing about. And when it got to the point to where we couldn't even bring her up or we'd start fighting again. And so we were losing all the things that we were learning that we had learned through Anasazi. Not completely, but there were times when I thought, oh my gosh, are we slipping again? Are we falling back into that? And so one night we had a date. This was about a year ago. We had a date. We come back. We go out to the backyard. We're sitting around the fire. And stupid me, I have to bring up Gabby, something I'm concerned about. We end up having a fight. And it turns out that, and I think it was over.
I was going to ask, like, when you're talking about, because obviously, you know, parents understand fighting over kids like that. That happens. With the nature of the fights, was it because of differences of opinion?
Yes,
No,
and
exactly
what it is.
that, yeah.
Okay.
So here's the thing. So before the accident, when Mike would go back on something that we had talked about or not follow through with something, it was usually because Mike wasn't the best listener. Our communication skills horrible. After the accident, it could have been because he wasn't paying attention, or it could be because there's still the damage to his memory center. And this particular night, we were arguing about, I think, some things that we had taken off of her cell phone to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had gotten him to put them back on. And there's a frustration there when you don't even know, do I have the right to be mad about this? Is it because you weren't listening and you disregarded me, or is it because you forgot? I don't know how I even get to feel about this.
Wow,
and so
that
you
is
feel
frustrating.
robbed.
Yeah.
You feel a little robbed. And so I said something to him. I don't remember what it was, but it was, I took a dig, I think, at his being a father, his fathering skills, his listening skills. And I wanted to hurt him. I aimed that arrow straight at him. And he sat back in his chair and he looked at me with such a hurt look. I just instantly felt bad because that's not me. I don't like to hurt people, ever. But I was perplexed. And here's the reason why. So I said to him, well, he said, why would you hurt me like that? Why would you say something so hurtful and mean? And I'm like, hold on a second. You can't hurt somebody if they don't care about you. You don't really love me. I'm not lovable. Why? How would that hurt you? So I asked him, what do you mean? What do you mean I hurt you? How can I hurt you? And he just looked at me and he said, because I love you more than anyone. Your words matter and your words can hurt me more than anyone. And I just sat there slow blinking for probably a full 60 seconds while I processed that. And I said, wait, you love me? Like you're in love with me? You love me? And he looks at me like I have lobsters growing out of my ears. And he goes, yes. And it was like instantly, Mike, my paradigm, it shifted. And instantly those walls went down to the ground. Wow. It was that instant. And from that moment on, I mean, we still argue when it comes to her. Yeah. We still argue about, who's gonna work the map quest in the car, when we're going somewhere. We still argue about those little things. But the thought of hurting him in any way is so heartbreaking to me because I have fallen head over heels in love for the first time in my life. I am 52 years old. We've been married. We're in our 25th year. And I have butterflies. I have butterflies when I look at him. I look at him and I just think, it's mine. And before COVID-19 broke out and he was actually working at the office, if he was unexpectedly home early and I'd come home and I'd see his truck there, it was like, oh, Mike's home. We have
Mike's still home.
No, yeah, he's upstairs. I love it. No, I do. I love it. And we have these Bitmojis on our phone that we've created. His Bitmoji is so hot, and my Bitmoji is cute, of course, because I could make her any way I want to. So our little Bitmojis are in love, and I get his little name across my cell phone, and I know it's going to be a Bitmoji message, and my heart swells. And it's an odd thing to say. I wouldn't trade anything that we've gone through to be able to feel this way now. It's worth the fight. Now, that's not going to be for everyone. There's abuse. There's marriages where only one person is working. But in our marriage, we always knew that we wanted each other in the eternities. Well, we didn't always knew that, maybe because we'd never forced ourselves to get to that point to ask. But once that question was asked, it became evident, and it was worth fighting for. Now, here we are. And I can honestly say that if both people are willing to work and there is no abuse issues, fight for your marriage, because it can happen. My gosh, what a blessing.
Yeah.
This is the most amazing man. And I have him. It's mine. It's mine, ladies. It's pretty cool, isn't it? What we've been through.
It's been a ride. It's been a ride.
Mike, from your perspective, like, since she's had this epiphany and like, what has that meant to you? What is that like? How does that manifest in your life now versus before? Like, what are the differences that you feel or can see? Like, what does that mean?
Probably the biggest difference I see now is that if we do get into an argument or about something, it's usually really short-lived. We have, again, we talk about, okay, it wasn't a cure. It was just, getting these tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've gotten rid of most of the baggage, right? The does he love me? Does he not love me? Does she love me? Does she not love me?
But you feel it from me, though,
and it's like,
right?
we know we love each other. We know we're in love with each other.
Yeah.
We still have disagreements.
Right.
But
that's life. That's
yeah. But we also know, okay, get the heat out and then
and
say you're sorry if you're
Yeah.
the idiot or whatever. It's just we're able to make up a lot quicker and sincerely, and I think just improve. I think if you were to graph the trajectory of our relationship, it's just been kind of just sort of steadily climbing and getting better and better. I think we argue less and less, and it helps that our daughter's doing well, and she's 19 going on 20, and
right.
And she's getting through her stuff as well, and she's doing pretty good. We wish she was in the church with us, but aside from that,
baby step, right?
Yeah. She's a great person, and
awesome.
But now you have to answer the question, though, because I mean, you feel the difference with me in how I feel about you. You feel that, right?
Yeah, but remember, I'm stunted emotionally. So that's nice.
I know he always bristles when I would say, emotionally retarded. I never meant that in a bad way. I meant that in the literal
literal sense of the word.
Well, my father's an electrical engineer, and so I understand the engineering heart.
He is left-brained.
No, I'm left-brained and a little emotionally stunted, from my youth.
But you know
or whatever.
what? You'd never know it from his little Bitmoji messages.
But it's funny. So now
it's love. We talk love all day long. I mean, it is. I love you.
So
I love you.
The joke is now that I guess it's not a joke because people at work say the same thing. That post-accident
Mike is completely different.
Because I was a little more stern. Like mentioned, I was intense. I was kind of a no BS and intense kind of guy. And,
right.
And so now she'll say I'm more emotional.
He's a marshmallow. It's sweet, so sweet.
And it worked. And they'll say, and it's helped. I think it's a combination. I don't know if it's the brain damage or a combination of that plus the Anasazi experience and the learnings and the teachings, of that program.
Serve you.
And just trying to, because I care more about helping people now. I'm getting older as well, but I was never interested in managing people. I was more of a technical leader kind of, but now I'm interested in helping folks and helping educate or help mentor or whatever the thing is. Right. I care more about people.
Isn't it interesting, because I've used the analogy of, when it comes to Gabby, that I'm this omniscient character, right? I'm looking over my daughter's life. And as the mother, I know all this stuff because I've been through it. I'm looking over this rat maze or mouse maze, and there's this little mouse. That's my child. And I'm seeing, oh my goodness, there's fire over there. Oh, there's a cliff over there. And I'm removing walls and I'm throwing up walls. I'm trying to engineer this thing.
And we're projecting our own lives onto
right.
her.
Of course,
and
right.
we
yeah.
are trying to do the same thing with our own lives.
Yeah.
And then we have Heavenly Father, who is overlooking the biggest mouse maze ever. And if we could just get out of our own way and allow him to do what he does, we may not like his methods. We may not like the path that he's leading us through on that maze. But my goodness, he's the master at getting us to where we need to be. But I just have to, in wrapping up, I have to tell you the funniest, cutest little story. So he came to me one night after the accident. And I think this was like maybe 6 months or a year after. And he's visibly distressed. And he says to me, I'm so frustrated. Like this accident has messed up my dreams. And I'm thinking, oh no, is he having really bad dreams? We are so going there. We are so going there. And so he says, I used to have the coolest dreams. Like I was Rambo and I'm out, saving our country and being this cool commando guy. And I'm like, yeah. And then he goes, but now I'm a ballroom dancer. And now I'm like doing the dishes, but I'm ballroom dancing as I'm doing it. And I am dying because I know in his dreams he's been wanting to be the guy out there, on the front lines, with the gun. And nope.
He's a good Rambo dream, right?
Rambo, the ballroom dancer.
I don't want to be a Fred Astaire. I want to be Rambo.
Rambella. So it's broken his heart in a couple of different ways, but
I'll tell you,
what a ride.
And what a ride indeed. And this show has been a ride. I think this is such an important show, and I sincerely, with all my heart, appreciate you guys being open, being so vulnerable, sharing your story.
Even if it's oversharing.
Even if it's oversharing, and even if you're emotionally stunted.
Not anymore.
I'm telling you, this has been an amazing experience for me because I think, I've taken away a lot, and I am grateful for you guys very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to add before we close it up?
No, just marriage is worth it.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's worth it.
Harbinger Institute books, great books.
Yeah, great books.
Self-help for both work or marriage, or child raising, parenting.
And stop getting in the way of God doing his job. He's better than us.
Amen.
Doing the job.
The only perfect parent.
Yep.
Amen. Well, we'll end it there. This is Mike Levitt with And If Love Remains. We've been talking to Mike and Kirsten Millsap. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.